is an example to show how to create a scatter plot in R. Again, we're in the R console. You need to type in the variable and the data itself. Again, I'm going to just copy in. I'm taking the data is called elevation. I'm going to call it elevation as my data set. I'm going to read my CSV file, and this is where the file location is. After that, it's always a good idea to look at the header. So head elevation. And you can see that we have two variables in this data set, elevation and temperature. Now to do a plot, all you do is type in plot. We do want to do elevation on the horizontal axis, and we want to do temperature on the vertical axis. Because I personally think that elevation affects temperature and not the other way around, that temperature doesn't affect the elevation. So we're going to do elevation first. Notice elevation is capitalized. We do need to put in what the data set is called. So elevation is the data set. I didn't mean to call them the same, but I did. And then elevation is the variable. So make sure this elevation is capitalized and don't forget the $ symbol. And then also from the elevation data set, you want to take the variable temperature. Notice temperature is again capitalized. And then it's not a bad idea to put in a title. We're going to do a title main. Remember his title. And then maybe you do elevation or altitude. Doesn't really matter what you call it, but you can call it whatever you want. Versus temperature. And then it would be good to do an X lab and a Y lab. So maybe I'll call my X lab altitude. And that is in feet. So I'll maybe put feet in there. And then I'm going to do a Y lab, Y label of temperature. And that's in degrees C. I'm sorry, degrees F. Degrees Fahrenheit. This probably doesn't matter to be a color, so I probably won't bother putting a color in. I'll just hit enter. And I'll get a nice graph. And this is the graph that was created by R. So we just have a bunch of dots that are scattered all over the page. One thing you'll notice is that the y-axis does not start at 0, and we'd like it to start at 0, so we're going to change and put in some limits to make it go from 0 on up. Noticing that the top number here seems to be 70, so we probably want to go a little bit above that. And so we're going to set our limits. So going back to my R console, I'm going to redo this plot, and again I can hit the up arrow, and I'll bring it back and then arrow over. And I'm going to change my Y limits, which is Y lim. Do the same thing with your X if you need to. We don't need to. Y lim is I want to combine, so the C means combine. I want to start at 0, and again I want to go something above the 70. I'll do 80. Just because 80 is a little above 70. And then hit enter. And again, you didn't see anything happen, but the graph actually just changed itself. Oops, sorry, I hit the wrong window. All right, so the graph changed itself. Keeps seeming to do that. So there it is. And so there's the graph has changed itself, and you can see we're going from 0 to 80, and it looks a little bit more. When you looked at the original graph, it didn't look as nice of a relationship here, but here you can kind of see a nice relationship, and it almost looks a little linear. Kind of think of a straight line going through these dots. You could also almost think of a decreasing exponential, not probably as much, but you can probably think of that one also. All right. And that's all we have.